とにかく一歩を踏み出すことだ。変わりたいと思ったならな。
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the very worst anime that everyone hates.
我々人類の祖先は火星から送られてきた隕石の影響を受け生まれたのです。我々人類は火星人がルーツだと？バカな。
Number 20, Ninja Collection. When they call this a collection instead of an anime, they aren't kidding. The story, and we use that term loosely, follows a group of ninja who go around defeating evil smoke spirits. At least we think? The actual plot gets lost pretty fast amid all the poorly animated fight scenes. Every episode is only a few minutes long, meaning there's no time for characterization, rising action, or any kind of coherent storytelling at all. You can technically finish Ninja Collection in under an hour, but the show is so offensively boring, you'll still struggle to make it to the end. Number 19, Tesla Note. There's two key ingredients to making a popular action comedy. It's literally in the name. You need action and you need comedy. Yet somehow Tesla Note doesn't have either. To start, the story can be boiled down to get the thing before the bad guy does. Rinse, redo, and repeat 13 times, and you have a whole season of Tesla Note. The series tries to liven up its familiar tropes with some bantering humor, but it ends up falling on its face more often than not. Oh yeah, and then there's the animation. 3D anime already has a bad reputation, and to put it nicely, Tesla Note won't be convincing anyone otherwise. Number 18, Conception. Buckle up, this plot summary is something else. In order to save a fantasy world, young man Itsuki has to get down and dirty with 12 different star maidens to make an army of superpowered offspring. Seriously. Questionable ethics aside, the strangest part of Conception is that Itsuki doesn't actually need to sleep with the women to make a child. A show like this was never going to be high art, but at the very least, we could have respected commitment to the bit. Instead, Conception goes down as a disappointing fumble that's too wild to recommend and too tame to be a guilty pleasure. Number 17, Dracula, Sovereign of the Damned. For what it's worth, this is probably the only anime in existence where you get to see Dracula steal Satan's bride.
Mortal! How dare you command the presence of Satan?
Unfortunately, it's not as cool as it sounds. Despite being based on a Marvel Comics character, the film's creative merits quickly fizzle out thanks to its flat storytelling and flatter animation. It's a droll, boring affair from start to finish. The story is practically nonsensical anyway. Then again, what do you expect when you cram 70 issues of comic book lore into 90 minutes?
My darling baby! Why couldn't you have destroyed me instead of my dear innocent son?
If this is the best Dracula could manage, he should have stayed in his tomb. Number 16, Lunar Legend Tsukihime. Say it with us now, there is no Tsukihime anime.
一瞬で私を17個の肉片に解体したでしょう。
Based upon the outrageously popular visual novel, Lunar Legend should have been a slam dunk. But that would have required actually adapting it properly. Instead, the characters are unrecognizable, the pacing is atrocious, and the story is filled to the brim with head-scratching changes. Lunar Legend is such a misfire, many fans of the original joke that it never existed in the first place. We can't blame them either. There's literally no reason to watch Lunar Legend Tsukihime when the visual novel is the same thing, but way better. Number 15, The Rising of the Shield Hero Season 2. Despite the name, Rise is actually the opposite of what Naofumi did here.
慣れちゃダメです。こんなの
He got off to a strong start with a first season full of action, revenge, and heartfelt adventure. But sometime during the hiatus, Shield Hero forgot how to tell an interesting story at all. It's such a stark 180 that you can't help but wonder what happened. With glacial pacing and no clear sense of direction, this sophomore slump turned Shield Hero from appointment television into a disappointing has-been. Season 3 redeemed the show a bit, but by then, most fans already abandoned this sinking ship for good. Number 14, Vampire Homes. In this case, what you see is what you get. Vampire Homes is quite literally about a knockoff Sherlock Holmes who investigates vampires. No, it doesn't get any more clever than that. Since it's based on a mobile game, you'd expect there to be some kind of message or fan service, but nope. Vampire Homes is nothing more than a lowbrow parody that never should have been approved, let alone seen the light of day. As if to prove how little anyone cared about the final product, the animation, or lack thereof, is so bad it's almost funny. Elementary, this is not, dear Watson. Number 13, The Devil is a Part-Timer, Season 2. At the start of this reverse isekai, Satan gets demoted from a demon lord to a fast food worker. Then, in Season 2, he gets demoted again, this time into a hollow cash grab. The debut of The Devil as a Part-Timer was engaging, inventive, and above all else, hilarious. 3 things that this 2022 follow-up is not. The show also changed animation studios, and the drop-off in quality is impossible to miss. The downgrade wouldn't sting so much if we didn't already have 13 outstanding episodes proving how great the concept can be. The Devil is a Part-Timer should have been one of anime's best, but after this season, it's a cautionary tale. Number 12, Brothers Conflict. As if moving in with a new stepdad isn't hard enough, the teenage Emma also has to deal with a metric ton of romantic advances. That's all fine and dandy until you realize her love interests are her 13 stepbrothers. There's more brothers than episodes in the series, and naturally, it's a recipe for total disaster. Brothers Conflict throws a bunch of cliches into a blender, adds a thick dose of icky family drama, and calls it a day. Oh yeah, and there's a talking squirrel too. We tried to explain it, but like most things in Brothers Conflict, it's easier to just ignore it and move on. Number 11, Ghazi's Wing. This 3-episode OVA has it all: a reluctant hero, a war-infested fantasy world, and a whole lot of overly dramatic set pieces.
My necklace is rattling. I wonder, could it be the Shiratori Shrine?
It's nothing you haven't seen a million times before, but in contrast to its forgettable plot, the English dub is incredibly memorable, just not for the right reasons. Even for the 90s, these performances are so ludicrously over the top, it's hard to imagine how anyone thought this was okay to release. The line delivery goes from bad to so bad it's good, back around to just plain bad again. Some advice: save your ears and skip this one while you still can.
He is like a slimy serpent.
Number 10, Puper. The scariest part of this horror anime isn't the graphic violence, the titular Puper virus, or even the tight 4-minute episodes. While those are still glaring issues, the real threat is Yume and Utsutsu themselves.
その子は生まれながらにして歯が生え揃っていました。まるで自分が化け物であることを主張するように。
When the two siblings are exposed to the namesake illness, Yume becomes a man-eating monster, and Utsutsu learns to regenerate at will. You can probably guess the gory places their relationship goes.
血にまみれて一心に肉を頬張る妹の姿。
With the right care, that idea could actually work. Sadly, Puper's meager runtime doesn't leave much room for thoughtful analysis, or really any kind of in-depth plot at all. Instead, fans were left with a shallow snooze fest that mistakes shock value for actual entertainment. Number 9. Lady Spo. Do you like sports anime? How about fan service? Juicy plots? Engaging rivalries? That whole thing? Good. Then stay clear of Lady Spo, because it's none of that. Women playing sports in space sounds like a surefire premise, but rather than exploring that, Lady Spo devotes most of its episodes to literal potty humor. Oh, and when we say episodes, we really mean slideshows. That's not us being mean. Lady Spo is actually just still images with mouth flaps. Even if you can somehow get past that, what you're left with is a sports anime that barely focuses on sports. The real question here is, what is the point? Number 8. Superior Defender Gundam Force. You'd think a franchise like Gundam would be too big to fail, but in 2003, Superior Defender Gundam Force proved everyone wrong with an unmitigated train wreck of an anime.
Soul Drive activated!
Everything fans loved about the series was gone. The Gundams were sentient, the animation was pure CG, and the storyline was dumbed down to appeal to a younger demographic. To add insult to injury, this kiddie version was supposed to mark Gundam's 25th anniversary too. Surprising no one, this so-called celebration went down in flames.
We'll have you cooking with gas in no time.
In fact, at the time, SD Gundam Force was the least watched Gundam title in Japan ever. Those kinds of numbers don't lie. Number 7. Berserk. Whether you're a longtime fan or have never caught an episode, there's no enjoying this 3D misfire. On principle alone, the janky CGI and lackluster pacing would make for an incredibly middling fantasy anime. But the fact that this has the name Berserk attached to it makes it so much worse. The 1995 series is still beloved to this day, to the point that fans spent almost 20 years asking for a proper sequel. What they got instead was an ugly hack job that failed to do its source material justice. Suffice it to say, 2016's Berserk is not the follow-up fans wanted, expected, or deserved. Number 6. GIAT. You want a plot rundown? Okay, here goes. A samurai, a ninja, and a monk walk into a bar and start killing monsters. There you go, now you're all caught up on the mess that is GIAT. Despite some time-traveling shenanigans and an action-filled setup, the show is an exercise in staying awake. There's just no stakes in anything that happens, mainly because it's impossible to take the hideous CG monsters seriously. Keep in mind, this is a show about a pandemic turning people into mindless creatures, and it aired in 2020. Yawn-inducing at best and tone-deaf at worst, GIAT is barely worth the time it takes to scroll past it. Number 5. Handshakers. Holding hands is a normal part of any romance anime. Here though, it's the entire show. For reasons we can't even begin to unpack, Tazuna and Koyori have to remain joined at the palm in order to ask God for a wish. But first, they have to defeat other pairs of handshakers. Don't ask us why. The plot is incomprehensible, and yet the visuals are somehow even worse. If you like abhorrent 3D backgrounds, headache-inducing camera work, and oily filters over every frame, Handshakers is for you. But if you value your time or your eyes, it's best to avoid this one like the bloody plague. Number 4, Mars of Destruction. Anyone who says there's no such thing as bad publicity has clearly never read a review for Mars of Destruction. This OVA is legendary in all the wrong ways, and truly, we'd be here all day if we tried to break down why. So we'll just hit the big points. The animation is abysmal. The story is a walking cliche, and the so-called twist ending inspires more laughter than anything else.
この星を侵略したのは貴様たちなのだ。俺たちこそ地球人。
You can go through every component, there's just nothing redeemable here. Add in lazily edited death scenes and comically overblown voice acting, and Mars of Destruction is a textbook example of anime gone wrong.
俺たちがこの星を侵略した。
Number 3, The Promised Neverland Season 2. Not every story gets the anime it deserves, but this isn't just a bad adaptation, it's a full-on butchering.
これは食事じゃない。仕返しだ。
Unlike its brilliant first season, The Promised Neverland's second go-around began needlessly deviating from the source material. All it did was create an overly complicated narrative that no one was happy with. But even if you excuse the growing pains, there's no defending the finale. Instead of getting things back on track, The Promised Neverland crammed half the manga into a montage and then had the gall to say, "The end." It was a spit in the face to the story and had everyone agreeing that this anime had broken its promise.
ただいま。みんな。
Number 2, Xarm. There's hideous, there's unwatchable, and then there's Xarm. It's no stretch to say that this is in serious contention for one of the ugliest anime to ever grace television screens. It's not just that the CGI is genuinely atrocious, these shaky camera movements will actually hurt your eyes after a while. We wish we could say the story and characters were any better, but they're not. Xarm fails on every fundamental level, both as an anime and as a piece of entertainment. To be fair, there might be a good story buried somewhere in its sci-fi premise, but if there is, you won't find it in this adaptation. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure to go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1, Fooly Grunge. Ugh, if you're a die-hard Fooly fan, the only thing we can say is sorry. In yet another attempt to cash in on the magic of the original series, Grunge became a money-grubbing affair, devoid of any passion whatsoever. At first glance, you probably think the cheap CGI is bad enough, but since each episode is essentially the same story, from a different character's point of view, the whole thing feels redundant before it even begins. Ironically, that's a good metaphor for how completely unnecessary Grunge is in the first place. Now that they've officially lost their fanbase for good, fingers crossed Fooly can finally rest in peace. Did we miss any anime misfires? Let us know in those comments below.
I'm going to have to do this?
Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from Watch Mojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.